The alarm screamed through the mining tunnels at exactly 6 in the morning, just like it had every day for the past 26 years. Maya Cross rolled off her thin sleeping mat and pulled on her work clothes without thinking. Around her, hundreds of other humans did the same thing in the cramped slave quarters of Corvin 7. The Thyrosians liked their schedules. Everything had to happen at the right time in the right way, or someone would get hurt. Maya had learned that lesson when she was 7 years old and tried to sleep in. The burn scar on her shoulder still reminded her of that mistake. She walked through the metal corridors toward the mining section, her boots making soft sounds on the floor. The walls were covered with pipes and wires that carried power to the machines. Everything smelled like oil and dust and sweat. Maya knew this smell better than anything else in the universe. The Thyrosians were already waiting when the human workers arrived. They stood 8 feet tall on their long legs, with green scales that caught the light from the ceiling. Their yellow eyes never seemed to blink, and their voices sounded like rocks grinding together when they spoke. Overseer Grex pointed at Maya with one of his 4 arms. "You work in Tunnel 7 today. The crystal deposits are deep. Do not break anything." Maya nodded and picked up her tools. The plasma cutter was heavy in her hands, but she had been using one since she was 12. The Thyrosians said human children were old enough to work once they could lift the equipment. Maya never knew if that was true or not. She had never seen a Thyrosian child. Tunnel 7 was darker than the others. The lights flickered sometimes, making shadows jump around the walls. Maya started cutting into the rock face, looking for the blue crystals that powered Thyrosian ships. The work was hard and boring, but she was good at it. Her hands knew exactly where to cut and how much pressure to use. "Maya," the voice came from behind her. She turned and saw Thomas, an old man who had been working the mines longer than anyone. His hair was white and his back was bent, but his eyes were still sharp. "What is it?" Maya asked, not stopping her work. The overseers watched everything through their floating cameras. "Did you ever wonder why we are here?" Thomas asked quietly. He was cutting crystals from a different part of the wall, but he was close enough to talk without the cameras hearing. Maya thought about the question. "We are here because the Thyrosians brought us here. We work because that is what humans do." Thomas made a sound that might have been a laugh. "That is what they want us to think. But I remember stories my grandfather told me. Stories about Earth." Maya had heard the word Earth before, but she did not know what it meant. "What is Earth?" "Our home world," Thomas said. "The place where humans came from long ago. My grandfather said we were not always slaves. He said we were something else." "What else could we be?" Maya asked. The idea did not make sense. Humans were workers. Everyone knew that. The Thyrosians were the smart ones, the strong ones, the ones who built ships and ruled planets. Humans just did what they were told. Thomas was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "He told me we were warriors once, fighters, people who protected things." Maya almost laughed. The idea of humans fighting Thyrosians was impossible. A human was 5 feet tall and weak. A Thyrosian was 8 feet tall with claws and scales and weapons that could burn through metal. "That is just a story, Thomas. Stories are not real." "Maybe," Thomas said. "But sometimes I watch you work, and I see something different. The way you move, the way you think fast when something goes wrong. It reminds me of those stories." Before Maya could answer, the ground shook. A loud crack echoed through the tunnel and dust fell from the ceiling. Maya looked up and saw a crack running along the rocks above them. "Move!" she shouted. The other workers in the tunnel looked around in confusion, but Maya was already running toward them. The crack was getting bigger and she could hear the rocks starting to shift. She grabbed 2 workers by their arms and pulled them toward the tunnel entrance. "Run!" she told them. "The ceiling is going to fall." Thomas was still by the wall, trying to gather his tools. Maya ran back for him just as the rocks started to come down. She tackled the old man and rolled with him toward a support beam. The rocks crashed down around them, filling the air with dust and noise. When everything was quiet again, Maya coughed and looked around. The tunnel was blocked by fallen rocks, but she and Thomas were alive behind the metal support beam. She could hear voices on the other side of the rocks, the other workers calling for them. "Are you hurt?" she asked Thomas. The old man shook his head. "No, you saved my life." He looked at her with those sharp eyes. "That was not luck, Maya. The way you moved, the way you knew exactly what to do, that came from somewhere else." Maya did not know what to say. She had not thought about saving Thomas. Her body had just moved by itself, like it knew what to do without her brain telling it. That was strange, but she did not want to think about it too much. The rescue team took 3 hours to dig them out. Overseer Grex was angry about the lost work time, but he did not punish anyone. Accidents happened in the mines. Humans died sometimes. That was normal. That night, back in the sleeping quarters, Thomas sat next to Maya on her mat. "I have been thinking about what happened today," he said quietly. "It was just an accident," Maya said. "No," Thomas replied. "The way you moved was not human. Not the way they teach us humans move. It was something else. Something older." Maya wanted to tell him he was wrong, but she could not forget the feeling she had in the tunnel. For just a moment, when the rocks were falling, she had felt like she could do anything, like her body knew secrets that her mind did not understand. "What do you think it means?" she asked. Thomas smiled, and for the first time in years, he looked happy. "I think my grandfather's stories might be true after all. 3 weeks after the tunnel accident, Maya's work team got orders to dig deeper than they had ever gone before. The Thyrosians had found something with their scanning machines, a big empty space far below the regular mining levels. They wanted to know what was down there. Maya climbed down the narrow shaft with 5 other humans. The air got colder as they went deeper. Their helmet lights cut through the darkness, showing walls of smooth black stone. This rock was different from the crystal-filled stone they usually worked with. It looked old, like it had been here since the beginning of time. "Look at these walls," said David, one of the other miners. He ran his hand over the smooth surface. "This is not natural rock. Someone made this." Maya touched the wall, too. The stone felt warm under her fingers, which was strange because the air was so cold. Lines were carved into the surface, patterns that looked almost like writing, but not any language she had ever seen. "The overseers said this place was empty," said another worker named Rita. "But someone built this. Who could have built something this deep?" They followed the tunnel for what felt like hours. The walls stayed smooth and the strange writing continued. Sometimes Maya thought she could almost understand the symbols, like they meant something just at the edge of her memory. But every time she tried to focus on that feeling, it slipped away. Finally, their lights found something different ahead. A doorway, tall and wide, carved from the same black stone. But this door was not like the tunnels. It had pictures on it. Images of people fighting monsters, of ships flying between stars, of warriors holding weapons Maya had never seen before. "We should go back," David said. "Tell the overseers what we found." But Maya was already walking toward the door. Something inside her chest was pulling her forward, like a string attached to her heart. The pictures on the door seemed to move in the light from her helmet. She put her hand on the stone and pushed. The door opened without making any sound. Cold air rushed out, carrying a smell like metal and old things. Maya's light showed a room beyond the doorway, a big space with a high ceiling that disappeared into darkness. "Maya, wait!" Rita called, but Maya was already stepping inside. The room was full of things. Tables made of the same black stone held objects that gleamed in the light. Maya saw books with metal pages. strange tools with curved handles, and containers filled with liquid that glowed softly. But in the center of the room, on a table by itself, was something that made her heart beat faster. A sword. Maya had never seen a real sword before. The Thyrosians used energy weapons, guns that shot light hot enough to melt metal. But this was different. The blade was long and straight, made from metal that seemed to eat light instead of reflecting it. The handle was wrapped in some kind of dark leather, and strange symbols were carved along the blade's edge. "What is all this stuff?" David asked from behind her. The other workers had followed her into the room and were looking around at all the objects. "I do not know," Maya said, but that was not completely true. Part of her did know, or at least felt like she knew. The objects looked familiar, like things she had seen before in dreams she could not remember. She walked toward the sword. With each step, the feeling in her chest got stronger. The weapon seemed to be calling to her, though that was impossible. Swords were just pieces of metal. They could not call to anyone. "Do not touch anything," Rita said. "We should report this to the overseers first." But Maya was already reaching for the sword. Her fingers closed around the handle, and the world exploded into light and sound and images that were not images. She saw herself, but not herself. A woman who looked like her but was stronger, faster, deadlier. This other Maya fought monsters with too many teeth, stood on the bridges of starships, led armies of humans across worlds covered in fire and ice. She saw techniques for fighting, ways to move her body that would make her unstoppable. She saw other humans, thousands of them, all carrying swords like this one, all fighting to protect people who could not protect themselves. The visions lasted only a few seconds, but when they ended, Maya was different. The sword felt light in, her hand like it weighed nothing at all. She could feel every muscle in her body, knew exactly how to move to be faster and stronger than she had ever been before. "Maya!" David's voice sounded scared. "Your eyes, they are glowing." Maya looked at her reflection in the blade of the sword. David was right. Her eyes were shining with a soft blue light, the same color as the crystals they mined. But even as she watched, the light faded away. "I am fine," she said. Though she did not feel fine, she felt awake for the first time in her life. The sword hummed in her hand, making a sound so quiet she thought she might be imagining it. "We need to leave," Rita said. "Right now. If the overseers find us down here with all this stuff, they will be very angry." Maya knew Rita was right, but she did not want to put the sword down. It felt like it belonged in her hand, like she had been looking for it her whole life without knowing it, but she could not take it with her. The overseers would ask questions she could not answer. She set the sword back on the table and stepped away. It felt like tearing off a piece of herself. The team climbed back up to the regular mining levels and reported what they had found. Within an hour, Thyrosian scientists and soldiers were heading down the shaft with their own equipment. Maya watched them go and felt sick to her stomach. 2 days later, Overseer Grex came to find her while she was working in Tunnel 3. "You, human Maya, come with me." Maya put down her tools and followed the tall alien through the facility. He led her to a part of the mining station she had never seen before. Clean white rooms with machines that beeped and hummed. Scientists in special suits were working at tables covered with the objects from the underground room. "Sit there," Grex said, pointing to a chair in the middle of one room. "Do not move." A Thyrosian scientist approached her. His scales were a lighter green than Grex's, and he wore glasses over his yellow eyes. "I am Dr. Vane," he said in the grinding voice all Thyrosians had. "We want to ask you about the room you found." "I told the other overseers everything," Maya said. "Yes, but there is something interesting," Dr. Vane replied. He picked up a device that looked like a metal box with wires coming out of it. "We have been studying the objects from that room. Most of them do nothing when we touch them. But the sword only works when humans touch it." Maya's heart started beating faster, but she tried to keep her face calm. I do not understand. We have security recordings from the mining tunnels, Dr. Vane said. We saw what happened when you picked up the sword. The energy readings were very interesting. We want you to touch it again. Maya wanted to say no, but humans did not say no to Thyrosians, not if they wanted to keep living. She nodded. Dr. Vane led her to another room where the sword was lying on a metal table. It looked smaller here, under the bright lights, but Maya could still feel it calling to her. She reached out and touched the handle. Again, the visions came, but this time they were clearer. She saw the truth about humans, about what they had been before the Thyrosians found them. She saw why. The sword only worked for her people, and she saw what was going to happen next. When the visions ended, she was smiling. Dr. Vane kept Maya in the research labs for 7 days. Every morning they brought her to the White Room and made her touch the sword. Every time she held it, more memories flooded into her mind. Not her memories, but the memories of her people. She saw fighting techniques that had been passed down through generations, learned how to read the movements of enemies, understood how to turn any object into a weapon. On the 7th day, something went wrong with the machines that were watching her. Maya was alone in the room with the sword when sparks started flying from the metal restraints around her wrists. The locks clicked open by themselves. Maya looked around the empty room. Through the glass window, she could see Dr. Vane talking to other scientists in the hallway. None of them were looking at her. She had maybe 30 seconds before they noticed the restraints were broken. She grabbed the sword. The moment her fingers touched the handle, she knew exactly what to do. The door burst open just as Maya rolled behind the metal table. 3 Thyrosian guards rushed in, their energy weapons already charging up. Maya could hear the high whine the guns made when they were ready to fire. "Human, surrender immediately," one of the guards called out. Maya stood up slowly, keeping the sword behind her back. The guards relaxed a little when they saw her hands looked empty. That was their mistake. She moved like water flowing downhill. The sword came around in a perfect arc, cutting through the first guard's weapon before he could react. Her body spun, using the motion to avoid the second guard's shot, and the blade found the gap in his armor at the neck. The third guard was faster, but Maya was already moving. She ducked under his claws and drove the sword up through his chest. The whole fight took less than 10 seconds. Maya stood in the middle of the room, breathing hard, looking at the 3 dead Thyrosians around her feet. She had just killed 3 armed soldiers with a sword. That should have been impossible, but it did not feel impossible. It felt right. Alarms started screaming through the facility. Red lights flashed on the walls, and Maya could hear boots running in the hallways. She had to move fast. She ran through the research labs, the sword light in her hand. Every time a guard tried to stop her, her body knew exactly how to fight. Duck under the energy beam, slide between the alien's legs, cut the tendons behind the knee. Spin away from the claws, use the wall to jump higher, bring the blade down on the neck. The moves felt like dancing, like her muscles remembered steps, to a song she had never heard. Maya fought her way through the facility toward the mining levels. She needed to get back to the other humans, needed to tell them what she had learned. But first, she had to survive the army of guards that was trying to kill her. In the main corridor, she faced 6 guards at once, their energy weapons filled, the air with burning light, but Maya was never where the beams were aimed. She moved between the shots like she could see them coming before they fired. The sword cut through their weapons, their armor, their bodies. None of them had time to scream. When she reached the mining levels, the human workers were pressed against the walls, watching her with wide eyes. They had never seen a human fight before. Most of them had never seen anyone fight 3 to 1. Odds and win. "Maya," Thomas called out from the crowd. "What happened to you?" "I remembered," Maya said. She held up the sword, and in the light from the mining equipment, they could all see the strange symbols carved along the blade. "I remembered what we used to be." "That is impossible," said David. Humans are not fighters. We are workers. No, Maya replied. That is what they told us, but it is not true. She looked around at all the faces staring at her. We were warriors once. All of us. We protected people. We fought monsters. We flew between the stars and made the galaxy safe. Some of the humans laughed. Others looked scared. But Thomas stepped forward, his old eyes bright with hope. I told you, he said to Maya. I told you my grandfather's stories were true. More guards were coming. Maya could hear them in the tunnels above, getting ready to surround the mining levels. She had to think fast. Listen to me, she said to the crowd of workers. I cannot fight all of them by myself, but I do not have to. The memories are in all of us. The knowledge is in your blood, just like it was in mine. You just have to remember. How? Asked Rita. How do we remember? Maya thought about the moment when she first touched the sword, about the explosion of light and knowledge that had filled her mind. You do not need the sword, she said. You just need to stop believing their lies. Stop thinking of yourselves as weak. Stop acting like slaves. The guards were getting closer. Their boots echoed through the tunnels like thunder. They are coming, David said. We should hide. No, Maya said. We should fight. She picked up a piece of broken mining equipment, just a metal rod about 3 feet long. In her hands, it became a weapon. She spun it like a staff, and somehow the motion looked deadly. Pick up anything you can use as a weapon, she told the others. Trust your instincts. Trust your bodies. Remember what we are. Some of the humans backed away, too scared to move, but others stepped forward. Thomas picked up a wrench. Rita grabbed a broken piece of pipe. David found a sharp chunk of crystal from the mines. The first wave of guards came around the corner, their weapons already firing. Maya threw herself into the fight, the sword singing through the air, but this time, she was not alone. Thomas moved. Like a man half his age, the wrench in his hands crushing alien bones with perfect precision. Rita flowed around energy beams like she had been dodging them her whole life, her pipe finding the weak spots in Thyrosian armor. David fought with the crystal shard like it was a dagger, fast and silent and deadly. One by one, the other humans joined the fight. As they fought, Maya could see the change happening in their eyes. The dull look of slaves was disappearing, replaced by something bright and dangerous. They were remembering, not just the techniques, but the feeling, the knowledge, that they were more than what their masters had told them. The battle lasted for hours. Wave after wave of guards came down into the mining levels, and wave after wave was destroyed by humans who had finally remembered how to fight. By the end, the tunnels were full of dead Thyrosians, and the humans were standing over them, breathing. Hard but victorious. Maya looked around at her people. They were dirty and tired and covered in alien blood, but they were smiling. For the first time in their lives, they looked free. What do we do now? Rita asked. Maya held up the sword, and its blade caught the light from the emergency lamps. Now we remember everything, she said, and then we teach the rest of the galaxy who we really are. In the distance, more alarms were starting to sound, not just in their facility, but in others across the moon. The news was spreading. Humans were fighting back. The revolution had begun. News of the uprising on Corvin 7 reached the Imperial Palace on Thyros Prime in less than 6 hours. Emperor Thane stood in his crystal tower, looking down at reports from 17 different worlds where human slaves had suddenly started fighting back. The numbers did not make sense. How could weak, stupid humans defeat trained Thyrosian soldiers? Bring me recordings of this sword-wielding human, the Emperor commanded his advisors. I want to see what we are dealing with. General Arxon activated the holographic display in the center of the throne room. Images filled the air. Security footage of Maya fighting through the research facility, moving like liquid death, cutting. Down guards who should have been able to kill her easily. This is impossible, said Minister Keth, the Emperor's chief scientist. Humans do not fight like this. They are barely above animals. Emperor Thane watched the recordings with growing interest. The human female moved with a precision that impressed even him. Every motion had purpose. Every strike was perfectly placed. This was not the clumsy flailing of a desperate slave. This was the work of a trained warrior. "How many humans are on this mining moon?" he asked. "Approximately 12,000, General Arkson replied. "But only a few hundred participated in the uprising. The rest were killed or evacuated before they could join the fighting. And now, the human rebels have taken control of the entire facility. They have access to communications equipment and have been broadcasting to other human populations across the galaxy. The uprisings are spreading." Emperor Thane turned away from the hologram and walked to the great window that looked out over his capital city. Thyrus Prime was beautiful. Crystal spires reaching toward the stars, floating platforms carrying millions of citizens, ships coming and going from dozens of worlds, all of it built on the backs of human labor. "What do we know about this sword?" he asked. Minister Keth stepped forward with a data tablet. "It was found in an ancient chamber beneath the mining facility. Our analysis suggests it is over 10,000 years old, predating our empire by several millennia. The metal is unknown to our science, and it only responds to human touch." 10,000 years, the Emperor mused. What were humans doing 10,000 years ago? "According to our records, they were primitive savages living in caves on their home world," Minister Keth said. "But these new findings suggest otherwise." General Arkson cleared his throat. "My lord, there is something else. Our intelligence networks report that similar artifacts have been found on other worlds, always in hidden chambers, always ancient, always connected to human populations. Weapons, armor, star charts. It appears there may have been a human civilization we knew nothing about." Emperor Thane felt a cold weight settling in his stomach. The Thyrosian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds, enslaved dozens of species, built the greatest civilization in known history. But they had always believed they were the first truly advanced race. If humans had once been spacefaring, if they had once been warriors, then everything the Empire was built on was a lie. "I want that human brought here," he said finally. "Alive. I want to see what she knows." "My lord," General Arkson said carefully, "our forces on Corvin 7 have been unable to recapture the facility. The humans fight with a skill we have never seen before. Perhaps we should simply destroy the moon from orbit." "No," Emperor Thane said firmly. "If we destroy them, we learn nothing. And if there are more weapons like that sword hidden on other worlds, we need to know where they are." He turned back to face his advisors, his yellow eyes cold and calculating. "Send the Crimson Fleet. Bring the human to me. Use whatever force is necessary, but I want her alive." 3 days later, Maya stood on the observation deck of the captured mining station, watching Thyrosian warships appear in the sky above Corvan 7. There were dozens of them, massive vessels bristling with weapons that could turn the entire moon into dust. She gripped the ancient sword tighter in her hand. "They came for us," Thomas said beside her. The old man looked tired but determined. The fighting had been hard on him, but he refused to rest while other humans were still in danger. "They came for me," Maya corrected. "The rest of you should hide in the deep tunnels. They want the sword, and they want whoever can use it." "We are not leaving you," Rita said from behind them. She and David and 50 other humans had joined them on the observation deck, all carrying weapons taken from dead guards. "We fight together now." Maya smiled. 3 days ago, these people had been slaves who barely looked at each other. Now they were a family, ready to die for one another. The memories had done more than teach them how to fight. They had reminded them how to be human. A voice boomed down from the ships above, speaking in the grinding Thyrosian language, but using words that translated automatically through the station's computers. "Attention, human rebels! You are surrounded. Surrender the sword-bearer and the rest of you will be allowed to live as slaves. Refuse, and your moon will be destroyed." Maya stepped forward and activated the station's communication system. Her voice carried up to the ships, clear and strong. "My name is Maya Cross. I am a daughter of Earth, and I carry the blade of my ancestors. If you want me, come and take me." The first ships landed an hour later. Thousands of Thyrosian soldiers poured out, armed with the best weapons the Empire could provide. But they had never fought humans who remembered what they were capable of. The battle for Corvan 7 became legend. Maya led her people through the mining tunnels like a ghost made of steel and fury. The ancient sword cut through alien armor like it was paper. Her followers moved with the same deadly grace, turning mining tools into instruments of war, using their knowledge of the tunnels to strike from shadows and disappear before the enemy could respond. But there were too many Thyrosians. Slowly, inevitably, the humans were pushed back toward the deep levels where the sword had been found. Maya found herself in the ancient chamber where this had all started, surrounded by the artifacts of her people's forgotten past. General Arkson himself came down to face her, flanked by his best soldiers. The Thyrosian commander was larger than most of his kind, his scales black instead of green, his weapons crafted from rare metals that gleamed in the artificial light. "You have fought well, human," he said to Maya. "But this is finished. Come, with us willingly, and your followers will live." Maya looked around the chamber at the objects her ancestors had left behind. Books written in languages she was only beginning to remember. Star charts showing the locations of worlds she had never seen. And in the center of it all, the table where the sword had waited for her. "You want to know something funny?" she said to General Arkson. "You have been so afraid of us remembering who we used to be. But you never asked the right question." "What question?" the general asked. Maya smiled and raised the sword. Around the chamber, the other artifacts began to glow, with the same blue light that filled her eyes. "You never asked what made us forget in the first place." The ancient machines hidden in the walls came to life for the first time in 10,000 years. Energy flowed through circuits that had been waiting centuries for the right genetic signature to activate them. And across the galaxy, on 100 different worlds, buried chambers just like this one began to wake up. "What is happening?" General Arkson demanded. "You are about to find out why your ancestors were so afraid of humans," Maya said, "and why they worked so hard to make us forget our own history." The light from the artifacts grew brighter, and somewhere, in the distance, Maya could hear the sound of metal doors opening for the first time in millennia. The real weapons were waking up. The ships were powering on. The Guardians were remembering their purpose. Humanity's true heritage was about to return to the stars. The ancient machines sang to life with voices that had been silent for 10,000 years. Maya felt the chamber around her transform as hidden panels slid open in the walls, revealing technology that made Thyrosian science look like cave paintings. Holographic displays flickered into existence, showing star maps of the entire galaxy with thousands of blinking lights. "Each light is a hidden facility," Maya said, understanding flooding through her mind as the sword connected her to the awakening network. "Each one has been waiting for us to remember." General Arkson raised his weapon, but before he could fire, the floor beneath his feet began to glow. Patterns of light raced across the stone in spirals and curves that hurt the eye to follow. The Thyrosian soldiers backed away in confusion as the chamber filled with a humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "What sorcery is this?" Arkson growled. "Not sorcery," Maya replied. "History." The holographic displays showed more than just locations now. Images filled the air around them, memories preserved in crystal and light. Maya saw the truth of what humans had been before the Great Forgetting. They had not been primitive savages hiding in caves. They had been the guardians of the galaxy, protectors who stood between the innocent and the darkness that lived in the spaces between stars. She saw vast ships built in Earth's orbital shipyards, crewed by humans who carried swords like hers, and wore armor that could turn aside the breath of dragons. She saw battles on 1,000 worlds where human warriors fought things that had crawled out of the deep void, monsters that fed on fear and despair and the screams of dying civilizations. And she saw why they had been forced to forget. There was a war, she whispered, the memories flowing through her like water through a broken dam. The old darkness came from beyond the galaxy's edge. It consumed entire species, turned them into its servants. Only humans could fight them, because only humans were too stubborn to surrender, too angry to give up hope. The images showed the final battle. Earth's sun going dark as creatures of living shadow wrapped around it like hungry serpents. The last human fleet making a desperate choice, not to win, but to hide, to protect the galaxy by erasing themselves from it. They used the quantum forge, Maya said, her voice full of wonder and sorrow. They rewrote history itself, made it so humans had never spread to the stars, never built ships, never learned to fight. The old darkness could not consume what did, not exist. General Arkson was backing toward the chamber entrance, his soldiers following. "This is impossible. Humans are weak. You are slaves." "We were slaves by choice," Maya said. The sword in her hand was blazing with blue fire now, and she could feel its twin weapons awakening on distant worlds. "We chose to be forgotten, so the galaxy could survive. But the old darkness is stirring again. The barriers are weakening. That is why the memories are returning now." Through the quantum network, Maya could sense other humans across the galaxy, feeling the awakening. On mining worlds and factory stations, in slave quarters and work camps, her people were remembering. The genetic locks that had kept their heritage buried were dissolving, and with them came the knowledge they needed to fight. She could see it happening in real time through the holographic displays. On Kepler Station, a human maintenance worker named Peter picked up a wrench and suddenly knew 17 ways to kill with it. On the agricultural world of New Harvest, a woman named Anna looked at the Thyrosian overseers and remembered that her ancestors had once commanded fleets that could crack planets in half. The rebellion was spreading faster than light itself, carried by quantum signals that connected every human mind to the ancient network. Maya watched as slave populations on 100 worlds rose up simultaneously, their movements coordinated by instincts that had been buried for millennia. "You cannot stop this," she told General Arkson. "Every human in the galaxy is waking up. Every one of them is remembering what we sacrificed to keep you safe." "Safe from what?" Arkson demanded, though his voice shook with fear he was trying to hide. Maya turned to look at one of the holographic displays. It showed the edge of the galaxy, where the stars grew thin and cold. But there was something moving in that darkness, something vast and hungry that had been waiting for its chance to return. "From them," she whispered. The display zoomed in, showing creatures that existed halfway between matter and nightmare. They flowed through space like living oil, consuming light itself, turning entire solar systems into feeding grounds for their endless hunger. And at their center, something that might once have been a planet, but was now a writhing mass of tentacles and eyes and screaming mouths. "The old darkness," Maya said. "They ruled the galaxy before any of our species existed. They consumed everything in their path, turned whole civilizations into extensions of their will. When humans first reached the stars, we found the ruins of their empire. Billions of dead worlds, trillions of bones bleaching under foreign suns." General Arkson stared at the images with growing horror. "If they were so powerful, how did you defeat them?" "We did not defeat them," Maya replied. "We drove them back." to the void between galaxies and built barriers to keep them there. But barriers require maintenance, guardians to watch for cracks in the walls. That was our job for 3,000 years, until they found a way to corrupt our minds from the inside. The hologram showed the final phase of the ancient war. Maya saw human warriors turning on each other as shadow creatures whispered poison into their dreams. She saw Earth's great cities burning as madness spread like a plague. She watched her ancestors make the hardest choice in history. The quantum forge could rewrite reality, but only on a small scale, she continued. So they used it to erase human civilization from the galaxy's memory. Made it so we had never spread to the stars, never built weapons, never learned to fight. The old darkness had nothing left to corrupt. But you remained, Arkson said, understanding, beginning to dawn in his yellow eyes. We remained as slaves and workers, scattered across the galaxy in small numbers. Maya nodded. Harmless, forgotten. But the genetic memories stayed locked in our blood, waiting for the day when they would be needed again. Through the quantum network, Maya felt the awakening reaching its peak. On Thyros Prime itself, human servants in the Imperial Palace were looking at their masters with new eyes. In the space docks orbiting the capital world, human technicians were discovering that they knew how to sabotage Thyrosian warships in ways their owners had never imagined. The barriers are failing, she said, gesturing to another display that showed cracks spreading through the dark matter constructs at the galaxy's edge. The old darkness is testing its prison, looking for weak spots. Soon they will break through, and when they do, only humans can stop them. Why only humans? Arkson asked. Maya smiled, and for the first time, it was not the smile of a slave or a rebel. It was the smile of a guardian who had finally remembered her purpose. Because we are the only species crazy enough to stare into the abyss and laugh. We are the only ones who can touch darkness and not be consumed by it. We are humanity, and we do not surrender. The chamber shook as explosions echoed from above. The Thyrosian fleet was bombarding the mining station, trying to collapse the tunnels and bury the ancient chamber. But it was too late. The network was fully active now, connecting every human mind in the galaxy to the knowledge they needed. Your empire is finished, Maya told General Arkson as chunks of rock fell from the ceiling. Not because we want to rule you, but because we need you to remember what you have forgotten. You used to be warriors too, before you became comfortable, before you started believing that strength came from technology instead of spirit. Through the quantum link, Maya could feel the first human ships powering up in hidden shipyards that had waited 10,000 years for this moment. Weapons that could split atoms with a thought were coming online. Warriors who had died in the ancient war were awakening in new bodies, their consciousness preserved in quantum matrices that existed outside of time. The old darkness was coming. Maya could sense them pressing against the barriers, testing the ancient locks, preparing for their return to the galaxy that had once fed their endless hunger. But this time, humanity would be ready. The war is starting again, she said to General Arkson, and this time, we will not forget who we are. The Thyrosian general looked at her for a long moment, then slowly lowered his weapon. What do you need from us? Maya raised the ancient sword above her head. All across the galaxy, her people were doing the same with weapons that had appeared in their hands as if summoned from dreams. The blade caught the light from the holographic displays and threw it back in patterns that spoke of hope and defiance and the unbreakable will of humanity. We need you to remember that you are more than conquerors, she said. We need you to remember that you are guardians too, because when the darkness comes, we will stand together or fall apart. The sword sang in her hands, and across the galaxy, 10 billion human voices joined the song. The Guardians had awakened. The war for everything that lived and breathed and dreamed of light was about to begin. and humanity was coming home to the stars.